Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Did You Know? I am really happy that you could be here. I don't have a lot of preparation into this presentation, but it felt really important to me to address our current climate, not just in individual areas, but as a whole. So as we're undergoing social distancing and the different political stances on that, as well as managing the same when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement, and when it comes to everything that's happening, where we get strong opinion and that opinion results in anger, hatred, and prejudice, anything that falls into this realm. So what I wanted to do was talk about this, because a lot of times we don't fully understand why people are responding the way they do, and sometimes it'll trigger a response in us that maybe isn't how we would traditionally respond. So this is something that I wanted to talk about tonight. Now, the first thing I want to say is the chats are open. So if you're on Facebook or if you're on YouTube, I look forward to comments, questions, anything you have to say. Also, if you have a question that you want to ask anonymously, sometimes we have experiences where we feel certain ways, and we feel that way, and maybe we don't want to, or maybe we don't understand it, or maybe we'll get backlash from our community if they see us post. So what I want to do is to allow people the opportunity to get the questions they need to get answered without concern of that. So I have my email address in the chat windows, linda@theselfcaresanctuary.com. I'm going to have that open where I can see any questions or comments there. I'll check it throughout the brain hack, just because not because I am watching the chat windows. I will watch that as well, because I really do want to be able to respond to everyone's needs. So I'm actually going to see if I can put that there so I can tell if something pops up. I'll see if it messes up the camera. I have to wait for your stream to catch up with me. So what I'm going to do is just begin. And like I said, I do appreciate any comments. And what I'll do is I will go ahead and give the information I have. And then if I don't have any comments before 6:30, I will log off. But I did want to open up and have that opportunity for you to ask questions or make comments as you needed throughout this. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I also want to mention, sorry, I always say I'm going to start, and then I have one more thing. I am taking donations on my website. There's a donation option that's a $1 donation, and then you can select as many units as you wanted. So if you want to give $5, it will be 5. You pick the $1 donation and buy 5 units of it. And then what I'm going to do is all of the money I collect from my broadcast this week. So today I'll also be live on Friday, and I will be live again on Sunday. All of the money I collect during that will go to the Black Lives Matter movement, because I think it's important to support causes that we are moved by. And there is a social media blackout happening that's saying, do not promote yourself at all during this, to step up and support the Black community during this time. And so I want to do that. I'm not making a political statement. I'm not telling people how they should feel. In fact, tonight I'll explain my understanding of that. I just want to make that statement that I am supporting that movement, and I will not reap any gain this week from what I put out there. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start by talking about the brain in a basic kind of way and how it works. So we hear a lot about this amygdala, this fight or flight response in the brain, but I want to talk about the primal mechanisms that drive it and why the reactions are so strong. Also address a couple of really great posts I've seen. I love the posts I'm seeing right now about this movement because they're educating people. People aren't ranting, or, well, there are people who will, and they rant for the same reason anyone gets angry or has prejudice, but I'm seeing a lot of people educating people. Instead of just saying you should agree with me, they're saying this is why I feel this way and this is why it's important. And so there are a couple of those I will talk about, but I want to begin with this idea of how the brain functions. And so what happens is when we're born with all these neurons from our ancestors. So if there's anyone out there that has prejudice feelings, that suffers from, I remember, so my family went through a huge trauma. My oldest sister, her first husband was Black, and there was this explosion in the family. My grandmother, who was racist, disowned her. And then my dad, who told me, he said, there was a point where we had a conversation and he said, you know, I didn't know I was racist until your sister married her husband. And then all of these feelings came up. But my dad, in spite of those feelings, went and told my grandmother, if you disown her, if you disown my daughter, you disown our whole family. We're supporting her and loving her. And it was a really interesting time for me because it was a huge explosion in the family, and there were a lot of conversations I hadn't had before that date. And as a child, there were these underlying things. There were jokes that my family made that were racist, sexist, homophobic. There were all of these things that were inherent to the culture that my dad had been raised in. He had been raised by someone that was had a white supremacist attitude. And so there was all of this, because it's not just about white, it's about having the right partners, it's about having the right community, all of these things that are hate driven. Now, what I want to convey here is that moment that my dad had where he realized that he had this opinion toward Black people that he didn't realize he had. And I was really proud of the way he addressed it, that he decided not to claim it as his identity. He decided not to let that define who he was. But these are the neurons. So there are a lot of people that adopt these neurons. So there are a lot of people that might be having opinions that they don't know why they have, or maybe they don't want to have, or maybe they had them in the past and they've evolved beyond them. And I experienced a lot of that. So I didn't have racism for me because I grew up in a neighborhood that had a lot of people from a lot of different cultures. But in addition to that, at being 13 years old and watching this explosion in my family, I saw the importance of it. It took me a lot of years beyond that to see the importance of not having a hate towards other groups, but gradually I learned. Now, if I continued to hold on to resentment and shame for myself for those neurons I adopted, I I would still respond in an unhealthy way. The point of what we need to do is become aware of why we think the way we think and why other people do. So whether it's us or other people, we're going to begin from the understanding that neurons are adopted. So we have all these neural basics. So they're conceptions that compile and connect together to form clusters that become ideas and opinions. And we all have them. We all have confirmation biases. And we tend to think other people should agree with our confirmation biases. Now, this is the second part I want to talk about. The survival of a primal species is in team building. Social survival dictates that my team must agree with me to be safe. And so this is why people campaign, why they go and try and get everyone else to agree with them. And that's one of the things I talked about with loving to see this educational aspect of what's happening here, of helping people understand. My daughter posted something amazing on Facebook yesterday, and it was a comment about that she said that somebody explained to her this comment of all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter. We obviously, anybody that is an evolved state believes all lives matter. For me, the way I respond to COVID and my extra precaution is because all lives matter, because I could carry a virus and cause death to somebody that has a weaker immune system than me. I'm not going to say, oh, well, only 300,000 people have died. I'm not going to say, well, only this percentage. What I am going to say is, okay, well, I have a responsibility. As soon as I learned that I could carry the virus without knowing and pass it to other people, I started wearing a mask. I increased I became more cautious in my behavior, right? Because all lives do matter. Now, that's not the point of this movement. And I want to share these two stories that are educational. And I want to explain why we may not always see. So we do have our confirmation biases. We do have our opinions. And we have this, there's this situation where, and you'll see it out there a lot if you pay attention at all and read the posts at all, that there has been a lot of movement in social acceptance. There's been a lot of forward movement in civil rights. There's been a lot of forward movement in rights across the board. Women, sexuality, race, all of these have improved. But it's really important to realize that if you're not of a minority race, then you can't understand what it's like to walk into a store and be followed or be pulled over just because of the color of your skin, and the rate at which people of certain skin colors are pulled over more. It became very evident after 9/11 and the way Muslims were treated, the way anybody of Middle Eastern descent has been treated. Until you see people fear you just because you exist, because of the color of your skin, and respond to you by following you, or having the concept of people shoot at other human beings and feel they have the right to do that because of that other person's color of skin. So it's not everybody doing this. And it's not that this movement is saying all white people are supremacists. It's saying that I want to walk into a store and be treated the same way a person of any skin color is treated. I want to not be followed or harassed because of my skin color. I want to be able to dress in a way that other people could dress and not be judged for that. The reference for that one that I saw was just being able to wear a hoodie. So it's about the fact that there is a large group of people trying to bring to awareness what it's like to live their life and what it's like to be oppressed. Now, there was a beautiful, like I said, the story my daughter posted. What she said was a person explained it to her really well when they said, responding to the comment Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter is equivalent to seeing someone's house on fire and seeing the fire department and all the people of the neighborhood trying to put out that fire. And then you, if your house isn't on fire, saying, why isn't anyone paying attention to my house? And the reason is because your house may not be on fire. And so educating and understanding that is really important. This is, like I said, one of the things I love about what's happening right now is that people are putting out stories like this to educate people on the premise of the movement, that people that have been oppressed for a long time no longer want to be oppressed. It is the same with indigenous cultures here. It is the same with people from the Middle East. It is the same for so many classes of people, the LGBTQ plus community. There are so many people that have been oppressed, and the truth is that it has been a select group of people that have done the most oppressing, and the majority of them are white. And so it's not an attack, but this is what happens in the brain. I think about the fact that there's all this focus and this concept of the curfews that are happening here, and the fact that hate begets hate. That's why I use Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote in this, is the fact that when we are triggered, we are reactive. We are experiencing a thing called implicit emotion. So implicit emotion are those reactions that we adopted. So in the beginning, when I talked about the fact that we adopt these neurons, our initial reaction are those neurons. There's a saying that says, the first thing you think is what your parents taught you. The truth is it's the neurons actually that you adopted that created the brain you were born with. But it says the first thought is what you learned. The second thought is you. And so when we're in this space where we have this implicit emotional reaction, those are those base neurons that already existed, that were there before even our birth. They're carried down. And then what happens is the more we learn, the more we're able to observe, to not think we already know, but observe something beyond ourselves, that we can then introduce new possibility into those neurons. But the initial response is going to be a triggered state of fear. Now, here's what I want to talk about. This is really important. Fear is contagious. Humans are contagious to one another. So there is a thing called mob mentality. Someone was talking about the riot that happened downtown Salt Lake and the burning of the police car. And they said that what they saw was that 3 people walked up and started pushing the car. And then right after that was just a swarm of people that went to the car. Because what happens is that when we suddenly feel empowered by something, it is contagious. And what happens in a fear-based response is, you think about the fact of a cornered animal. And I'm going to use animals and my dog particularly as an explanation for this. For any of you that met my little bug, my Boston Terrier pug mix, he was extremely aggressive when I got him. He's better now, but he's still aggressive. and he is a he responds instantly. Okay, there's this. So my daughter works with dogs in her career, dog behavior, and she's starting a program, and there's a great saying she has for it, which is, there are no bad dogs, they're just scared dogs. So when you see really aggressive dogs, those dogs are aggressive out of fear. The same is true for humans. And what I want to use is a closer relation to us, which is primates. If you watch primates, the minute you're in their territory, the minute you introduce any change into their environment, they become aggressive. They throw things, they scream, they become hyper aggressive. Aggression is fear. Aggression is a fight or flight response, fight or flight. And the fight response is implicit. So when we respond aggressively or angrily, it's not even ours. This is the stuff we've adopted. Nelson Mandela has a quote about the fact that we're not born with hate, it's taught. Now, to an extent, that's true. It's validated through our upbringing. And so those neurons we're born with are validated. But there are neurons we're born with. And I think one of the first things we need to do is stop blaming and judging ourselves for if we've had short-sightedness, if we didn't understand what people were experiencing in a situation. And I don't want to just keep this to the current movement. I saw a post today that was about awareness for the Black transgendered group, transgendered people, people with who are trying to just choose to be who they feel inside. I mean, there's a lot of hate toward people who change their gender. There's a lot of hate towards people that are in same-sex relationships. I mean, across the board, there are all these things. And the reason why is there's something in the primal mechanism that says we're only safe if we conform. And this is that old primal model. That old primal model says we must all be the same. And this is why I teach what I teach. Because I want to teach people that in the new model, the way you can develop your brain, difference now becomes opportunity. It becomes expansion. It becomes ingenuity. That new information becomes coveted rather than feared. And so there is no fear response to it. If somebody is different and wants to live a different lifestyle, it's amazing and awe-inspiring and beautiful. And so that we can look at people from all different cultures, from all different backgrounds, and love them, even the people that are responding in the worst ways. Now, part of what I wanted to do today was talk about understanding why people might have prejudices in the first place, but I also wanted to talk to the people out there who are angry, who are, whether it's the sexual choices of people or the color of their skin or the way they choose to live their life or the gender they choose to be, when we respond in any way but full consciousness, we need to understand that we're just triggered, that this is a fear response. And instead of running around and trying to build everyone up on our teams, a lot of people talked about the fact that they never thought there would be a riot where a police car was flipped over and lit on fire in Salt Lake, because it is such a, it's a more reserved community than a lot. But the way I saw it is, first of all, we're already in a fear-triggered state because of COVID-19. And there are a lot of political opinions when it comes to COVID-19, which is fascinating because it's an illness. Then on the next stage, we start having earthquakes here. So there are all these low level trigger points for us, where our brain is already in this heightened fight or flight state, because it's having to deal with this virus and having to deal with the social distancing and the effects it's had on business and culture, all the things that we could do before that we can't do now, what's happening in the economy, this whole global experience. And then we're socially distanced. So all we have time to do is really sit and literally team build with the people of our community. Now, this isn't true for all people. If we're not living in that primal state, this isn't going to be a thing that interests us. But if we're in the fear state, surrounding ourselves with people that agree with us become really important. And then what happens is this social media movement starts happening around the death of an individual. I saw a video today. I'm going to try and get through this without crying so that I can speak. And it was, the video is of George Floyd with his daughter on her shoulders, and she's saying, "My daddy's going to change the world." And people are dying, and we need to realize two things in that. One is that there is an opportunity for us to change those neurons that we were born with, and to be able to make a massive change in the world without people having to die. Because that video was heartbreaking to me, because I thought, wow, this person had to die. He's making one of the biggest changes that have happened in a long time in this movement, and it's everywhere, but he had to die. And so this time of social distancing has been so much about team building, about getting on social media and connecting with people that agree with you, and building this internal implicit emotion, revalidating what we were, the confirmation biases we hold. We all have opinions, but our opinions are our fears. A mind without opinion is a flexible mind, one that's open. So what I want to end with today is an invitation to everyone. What I invite you to do is to go out into the world in whatever way possible. Don't go out and risk people's health out in the world. Go out on your Facebook. Go on your Instagram. Learn about something that you didn't know before, about a culture you didn't know. Go on Google and search Black history. There's a big movement that's part of Blackout Tuesday, that's asking you to blacklivesmatter.c like cat, A like apple, R like Roger, R like Roger, D like David, .c like cat, O. It's ways you can help. It says, when you're done, educate yourself. This doesn't go away once the topic isn't trending. I want to do this, so if you have comments or anything, I can still see those. Sign petitions, text or call, donate, more resources, and for protesters. So this is an opportunity. And one of the things they're asking is, and I thought it was on this, it might have been on a post too, is to educate ourselves. So go out, and I think one of the things I saw was, it says, Blackout Tuesday does not mean you simply post a black picture and leave social media for the day. It means you stop promoting yourself and or your brand for the day, and instead amplify the voices and the initiatives of the Black community. Also, they're asking, please do not use the BLM hashtag for this. Use Blackout Tuesday instead. So this is why I made the choice today that I do want to ask you to contribute. I want that so that I can contribute, so that I can send that money in, because I think it's so important. But there's this request to go and educate yourself and share a story. Now I'm going to say something. It's not easy necessarily to look at our history and see who we've been and seeing the pain we've caused. But it's really important now to be able to see a new perspective. So what I'm asking you to do is to go out, study, and it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't just need to be the Black community. Go out to, if you don't, if you have a prejudice against the LGBTQ plus community, if you have a prejudice against the Middle East, if you have a prejudice against Democrats or Republicans, against anybody, if there's anything in you that feels this implicit emotional response, first, don't judge yourself. Second, please don't deny it. Third, go and research it. Educate your mind, because when you educate your mind, you tell your mind it's safe. And this is what transforms. I can talk to you about my perspective. I can tell you my opinion, but that won't transform your neurons. What's going to transform your neurons is your brain saying, oh, I'm safe. And if I can understand that other people, if there are people who are angry and prejudiced, I can understand that, oh, they're afraid. Also, if people have been lashing out, if we could understand that this is all fear, then we can find a place of compassion. And then the anger goes away instantly, right? This is what Martin Luther King Jr. was saying in his quote, is that being in the emotion, the implicit emotion that is the thing that scares us, is not going to cure that emotion. And so what I ask everyone to do is just start educating your mind, start seeing that other, and I'm not saying you have to agree with it. I'm not saying to try and change your mind. I'm saying it triggers a chemical reaction in the brain that if you start to research the thing that you're prejudiced against, that the brain will then feel safe and it will have less prejudice. You cannot agree with a concept. I think about the concept of people who hurt children, people who abuse children, or abuse anybody, spousal abuse, but children. I wanted to hate those people for a long time, people that hurt children, that hurt animals. But that doesn't serve humanity. If I can understand that the people that would do that are in pain, then I can have compassion and maybe I can help them so that there's one less abuser out there. It's not an easy thing. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying that it's possible if we can open up the brain. And the minute we start educating ourselves, we take on a role of nothing's happening to me. I'm now at choice and I'm leaning into it, and our brain feels safe. And then the prejudices, the angers, the resentments go away. And we can be in the space of mindfulness and compassion. So there's so much more I want to say. This is so important. And I do want to get more into the brain and those details, but I've done that in a lot of my brain hacks. So I do invite you to watch other brain hacks to get a full picture of this. Next week, I am going to be talking about dreams, but the following week, I'm going to be talking about the amygdala. So on June 17th, I will be talking about the amygdala and shrinking it. And when we can shrink the amygdala, we have less prejudice, less implicit emotion. So if you want to know more about that, I look forward to joining then. But I do want to tell you, first of all, be compassionate towards yourself. Be compassionate towards others. Understand that every single dysfunctional thing we do, every one of us, the entire species, every dysfunctional thing we do to feel safe. And we do it because we're afraid. Now, we may not feel the fear is fear. My dog doesn't look like he's afraid when he is chewing at a fence, trying to get through it at another dog. That's not, it doesn't look like fear, but it is fear. And so just understanding that sentence, every dysfunctional thing, everything we don't like in ourselves, everything we don't like in others, we are doing to feel safe. So educating the brain triggers the prefrontal cortex, which is where we feel safest, and it is where we will have the least reactive behavior. And then we can start acting proactively towards these problems, finding common ground. The way I see it happening with police that are at demonstrations and dropping to a knee and walking with groups and trying to find that common place, because it's not about hate. It can't be about hate anymore. Only love will solve this. And so just, if you're feeling those feelings, give yourself permission to just go learn something. If you're starting to feel judgment or hate or anger towards anybody involved, either side of any fence, go and get educated and tell your mind you're safe, and it will transform. And then that way you can have a bigger impact in the world. So I want to thank you for joining me. I do look forward to comments. If you have questions or comments that you didn't get a chance to share tonight, go ahead and add them to comments or send me an email, and I will address them in the Brain Hack next week. In the meantime, I hope everybody has a beautiful and safe and inspired evening. This is growth. We are becoming better as humans every day, and we just get the opportunity to do it consciously. So however you move forward on your journey, I do wish you tremendous success, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.